Today, we continue still with design thinking. We have looked at the importance. We've earlier defined design thinking, what it is. Today, we want to look at the stages of the design thinking process. There are different stages one has to undergo in the process of achieving effective design thinking that will help you bring out better products for your consumers. Design thinking follows a 5-stage process. You may, in some texts, come across a 6-stage process. That does not mean that it is wrong. It depends on how you break them. Sometimes you merge two together. So whether you call it 5-stage or 6-stage is the same thing. But here I want to emphasize to talk about the basic 5-stage process of design thinking. One is empathize. You have to empathize. In this stage, designers observe consumers with empathy to deeply understand their interaction with the product or service. Empathic observation uncovers hidden issues consumers were not able to say or could not articulate by helping to identify human needs that require addressing. Empathy. Sometimes there are problems consumers encounter with products, but they can't really put them down directly, say what it is. But when you do your observation with that empathy, you will be able to see the problem clearly. 2, you should be able to define the problem. Having seen the problem after observation, this is the problem. What then? What actually is the problem? Define it. So this second stage involves synthesizing observation from the first phase to defining the problem at hand. By understanding the difficulties consumers face and how they are affected, designers can precisely outline the issue, know what the issue is that needs attention. 3, you have observed with empathy, you have defined the problem. Thirdly, you now have to form ideas of how to solve this problem. So the next thing is to brainstorm and generate ideas to solve the identified problems. This can be done individually or in a group, better still, in a group, generating numerous ideas that are eventually refined. The 4th one, we now produce the prototype. So you have observed with empathy, you have identified the problem, you have defined what the problem is. Now we have to develop a prototype. The prototype stage transforms ideas now into tangible solutions. Prototypes don't need to be perfect. That's why we say it's a prototype. It doesn't need, at that stage, it doesn't need to be perfect. The objective is to quickly create something, a version of the idea you have formed for consumers to test and give us a response. So having developed the prototype, the 5th stage now is testing of that prototype. Testing involves presenting the prototype to consumers and observing their interaction. Observing their interaction, you need to have a feedback collection, a feedback that is important. It's a crucial aspect of this stage, feedback. Because there is no need putting out the prototype and you observe and you don't get a feedback. Because you get a feedback, and based on this feedback now, you will know what changes to make in the prototype. That's why we say the prototype doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. But it's when you put it out in the market and you get a feedback, then you start looking at developing the perfect stage. So Basically, there are 5 stages we have identified here. One is that you observe consumers empathically. You observe them, how they consume, with empathy. Because you do the observation, because whereas some consumers have a problem, they may not be able to put it down in black and white. But you, the producer, yes, you can. Having observed, you define what are these problems really. And having defined the problems now, thirdly, you now say, you form ideas. How do we solve this problem? You develop ideas, which you can do as a leader, but more often than not, it's better to do as a group. After having developed the ideas, you now produce a prototype. That is something that is close to solving their problems, something that is close to solving the observed problems. Note, prototypes are not exactly perfect products, because having produced them, you send them out for testing. Consumers will test, give you a feedback. And with the feedback, you now start gearing towards producing a perfect product. So these are the necessary steps in design thinking, as the case may be. And for you really to have your product always there in the market selling, you always have to be proactive. Always be involved with your consumers. Always know the problems they have and how to offer or proffer solutions to such problems, so that from time to time, your product is always there in the market and consumers are willing to accept your product. So that's what we have for today. And as you can see, we have gone through what design thinking is. So when next you hear somebody telling you he has a custom-made product, don't be deceived. Don't think it's something made in the heavens. Custom-made means that the product has been designed to satisfy particular consumer needs. It's been made to their taste to satisfy certain needs that they require. So that is why you have, for example, you have certain cars modeled in certain ways. You have bikes, maybe for people with disabilities. You have their motor cars modeled in certain ways. That is the aftermath of design thinking. And I believe every organization needs to have it, so that you will always be able to attain your goal of being a profitable venture. Thank you.